Good evening, everyone. Hello, hello. Council of Elrond time. Oh, thanks for popping in, Aiden. Sorry you can't stay. Next week. Evening page. Evening, Lola. Evening, Christy. Yola, hello. Okay. Let's talk some Council of Elrond. Is Jesse here? Jesse? You didn't leave any questions this week. No one else did, mind you. No one else picked up the sock. Maddie did, actually. Hi, Maddie. It was you, right? Maddie put in a question about, what was it? It was far away. Sorry, I'm going through the Discord. Cece made a good point about Boromir, that we don't want to be too harsh on Boromir. Kelly Marie Kelly Marie, are you in the chat? It's tough being on two different platforms. I don't know the screen names completely. Hey, Yola, I liked your point about Frodo being ready for the council. I feel ready for anything. Hobbits are indestructible, apparently, although that'll be put to the test. Oh, I don't have wine or ice cream. I could do with either. I'd take both, but I'd take either one in a pinch. Okay, well, so in the absence of formal questions, what I wanted to do, and this is a bit self-indulgent, but let's start with I so when I go through my book, I bought a paperback copy, so I could scratch it up, right? So I've got pencil marginalia here that I um, just sort of scribble and underline things as I go through. I thought it might be fun, at least for me, to just do a quick tour of the things that we're not talking about in detail tonight, of the notes that I made, the points that I thought were interesting or fun or just little digressions, and if we'll have to see if that sparks a conversation on any particular point. It may or may not, or it may or may not be of interest. But I wanted to share a couple of things. So the first one, just on the first page, 311, first page of the chapter. Sam walked beside him, saying nothing, but sniffing the air and looking every now and again with wonder in his eyes, etc. Sniffing the air. For my Hobbit readers, do you remember what Bilbo said when he first came to the Valley of Rivendell? He was walking down and it smells like elves. I wonder if Sam is smelling the Valley of Rivendell and thinking it smells like elves. Now, he's been there for, what, about a week or so, almost 5 days, I think, at this point. Um, but I don't think that's the sort of thing that would grow old for him. I think he would, Mr. Elves, sir, right? Of course, it would be smells like elves, sir, to him. But that did strike me. Sniffing, a hobbit sniffing the air in Rivendell. How can you not think of Bilbo saying smells like elves? And I wonder if that was in Tolkien's mind at the time. The next page, there was so when when Frodo arrived at the council and he was being introduced to the other people that he had not met, the other attendees. I had never noticed before that Galdor came on an errand from Círdan the shipwright. Do we ever find out what that errand was? Galdor takes a reasonably active role in the council. He's not central, but he asks a lot of questions. He kind of demands an answer of Gandalf, of where he's been and what he's been doing. Is this just an explanation? Because Elrond is going to say, "Called you were, but not by me." Suggesting or stating that they're all being there at the same time was something akin to an accident or chance, if chance you call it. Is this just sort of explaining why Galdor's there at all? Oh, he came on an errand. He had to pick up, bananas or whatever. Or do we? This is a genuine question. I don't remember. Do we get what Galdor's errand was? I tried not to read ahead to try to find that answer, but I want to see if we can think back on this, because I'd like to know what Galdor was doing there. Because Círdan is conspicuous in his absence here. There are two people, I think, who are. Well, three, I guess, from the perspective of the attendees. Saruman would be, not to everyone, conspicuous by his absence, but to some who don't know the issue. Círdan is another, and Galadriel is another. This is a council of the wise. Now, it's not a formally called council, so they wouldn't have been invited, but it's interesting to me that those two are not here. But we have a representative from Círdan, and I'd kind of like to know why he's there. Yeah, Paige says Sam probably read There and Back Again a few times, so it probably stuck in his mind. He probably was eager to get his nose into Rivendell once he got there. Yeah, he probably wondered what elves smell like. Although I wonder, no, there's no way. At Woodhall, it wouldn't have smelled like elves there. Or would it have? No, I gotta think being in one place for millennia, like Rivendell, makes the whole place smell like elves in a way that Woodhall wouldn't have. Yeah, Nikki says, I don't think there's an answer to what Galdor was doing there, what his errand was. I can imagine it has to do with, spoiler, the elves leaving to the Undying Lands, as he is on an errand of the shipwright. Yeah, so that is Círdan's role, for sure. He's the shipwright, and he gives the elves passage to the Undying Lands. But is that all? Is that the only thing he did? Like, we're going to learn in the council that Círdan was on the slopes of Mount Doom fighting Sauron at the Last Alliance, right? He's not just a ferryman. He must be a warrior. Now, obviously, Galdor's errand probably wasn't war either. But I don't want to pigeonhole Círdan. Círdan's pretty cool. He's got a beard. That's rare for an elf. Yeah, good question, Christy. What does elves smell like? Christy says, I'm thinking citrusy. Citrus is a good guess. I think like woodsy. I think juniper and kind of I think evergreen smell. That's what I think of. Lola says like the wind. I bet like the wind. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Paige, good one. Sweet yet spicy. Keeping the paradox there. Yes, neither old nor young. Yeah. Neither fresh nor musky. Post-rain flowers from Claire. Yes. Yeah, that's good. Oh, I like Paige's. There's got to be a paradox there somehow. Yeah. Okay. What was the other thing? We get a little more of stature in that we were told just after the introductions there, or during the introductions, a tall man, this is Boromir, with a fair and noble face, dark-haired and gray-eyed, proud and stern of glance. So we don't say anything about his musculature at this stage, although we do find out eventually that he's a tick boy. But he is a tall man, too. So this is more, I mean, he's a tall man in the company of elves. That suggests to me that he's taller than them. Kind of, oh, why am I blanking? I keep wanting to say Baron. Why am I, was Baron tall? I mean, Turin was tall, right? Turambar was definitely tall. And then the other thing about Boromir that I noted, and I'd always read this and read right past it, he had a collar of silver in which a single white stone was set. What does that mean? I wonder if it's a symbol of Minas Tirith, the White City, right? A white stone, like, chipped from the wall, basically, like that. This, a reminder of where he comes from. That's what I like to think of it as. But a white stone, that doesn't suggest like a diamond to me or something like that. That's not a white stone, right? This has got to be like calcium or something, something marble. Like this is got to be something emblematic of the White City, which we won't learn anything about for a while, but it's interesting that they call that out, that Tolkien calls that out, that he has a single white stone. And then, of course, there's his great horn, which is more prominent. But the white stone I picked up for the first time. Next page. It is now many years ago, said Glowin, that a shadow of disquiet fell upon our people. And a shadow of disquiet falling on his people, that reminds me of chapter 2, right? Where in Shadow of the Past, I can't remember, I should have bookmarked the exact phrase, but yes, that's what it was. Luckily, you found the page. When Gandalf said, when did I first begin to guess? It was the year that the White Council drove the Dark Power from Mirkwood, that Bilbo found the ring. A shadow fell on my heart then. I kind of want to lightly track this, because like this kind of is part and parcel with the foreboding and the foresight that we're seeing from a few characters here. But a shadow falling on... Now, I know this is kind of different, because what Glowin is saying is a shadow of disquiet fell upon our people. And that's whence it came, we did not at first perceive, words began to be whispered in secret, etc., etc. So obviously, I mean, the implication here, I think, is that Sauron has started these not rumors, but these thoughts within the minds of the dwarves and begun these whispers. But the phrase shadow of disquiet and a shadow fell on my heart seems symmetrical to me. And that's interesting. I don't know exactly what to make of that. But I found that interesting. I'm going too fast and I'm not catching these I'm not giving you guys time to put in your thoughts on these, so let me take a sip here. Yeah, I agree. Nikki says, I can imagine that even hobbits would be able to tell the difference between someone who's like 5'6" and 6'3" or something. Yeah, even though they're all big folk. Yeah, I think so. I think that I would think that you could, well, certainly you could perceive that. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Christie's providing us with a bunch of white stones and gems. Okay, white sapphire, white topaz, white agate, pearls. Yeah, pearls. What do you call a stone? A white stone? A pearl? I would think he would just say pearl. I know you're just listing them. White opals, white jade, white jasper. Well, what says white quartz? But do you think I'm onto something there? Do you think that it's representative of Minas Tirith? I can't think what else it might be, although I haven't put my mind to it a lot. Yeah, it could be any number of things. But absent any other evidence, I'm going to choose that it's something emblematic of the White City. like a token of his home. Um, what did I have? 14. Okay, so I got to linger on this just a little bit. The dark messenger that came to Moria and his Glowin's account of the exchange, because this is great stuff, right? This you can picture, you can hear the venom and the honeyed, poisoned words of this messenger, because this is just so well done by Tolkien and by just delivered by Glowin. This is I got to read a little of it. Well, first of all, I mean, get from him, willing or no, a little ring, the least of rings, that once he stole. It is but a trifle that Sauron fancies, and an earnest of your goodwill. I mean, methinks the lady doth protest too much, right? Like, there's no way this was going to work, right? It can't have been intended to work. That the messenger would think, okay, the dwarves are totally going to buy that it's just a trifle. It's just, a little trifle that Sauron fancies, right? There's no way that for this ring, Sauron will give his friendship and all of these things if it's just a little earnest of your goodwill. I mean, they've got to know this is something he desires greatly. So why present it that way? And I think it's because this isn't really a barter. This is I'm going to kill you if you don't do this. I will make war upon you. And in case you need a little nudge and a way to sell this to your people, here it is. But you don't actually believe this, and you know that I'm lying, right? Like that's just not possible, right? But it is so far beyond credible that it's effective, right? We both know what's going on here, but I'm going to give you a little excuse if you need to throw it to your people, right? No, it's just I'm not giving him anything important. It's just a trifle. It's an earnest of our goodwill. But then it gets so good. I mean, so find it, and 3 rings that the dwarf sires possessed of old shall be returned to you, and the realm of Moria shall be yours forever. Oh, are there meanings to that, right? The realm of Moria shall be yours forever. Yeah, that isn't that Oracle at Delphi like, right? If I throw you down a well with spikes in it, that well will be yours forever, right? You can have Moria forever. This will be yours forever. It will be your tomb. What's Sauron gonna do about the Balrog? Sorry, spoilers. What is he going to do about the nameless fear that dwells therein? He's not gonna evict it so that they can enjoy Moria in peace, but shall be yours forever. And he can claim at the end, yeah, it is yours forever. Enjoy. Diabolical and fun. Find only news of the thief, whether he still lives and where, and you shall have great reward and lasting friendship from the Lord. Great reward and lasting friendship from the Lord, yes. Okay, that's good. Refuse, and things will not seem so well. There's no way he didn't drag out that line, right? It's so good. And then, not what do you say, not do you accept the Lord's kind proposal, will you give him this earnest in friendship? What is the question that the messenger puts to Dan? Do you refuse? It's, so good. It's daring him. I dare you to refuse. Go ahead, do it. Do you refuse? Huh? This is venomous, and it's so well done. This is, as you can tell, just one of my favorite sections of this chapter. Now, Dan, to his credit, plays this excellently, right? I say neither yea nor nay. I must consider this message and what it means under its fair cloak. Good statesmanship. You can't say no to the, you rather yes. You can't say yes, I refuse. That's not good business right now. But buying time is good, and this is a good way to do it. Consider well, but not too long, said he. And then a great exchange here. The time of my thought is my own to spend, answered Dan. For the present, said he. Ah, Finn. So good. I just love that exchange. Catch up here. Oh, Jenny joined. Hi, Jenny. It's okay. I was late too. You guys need to hold me accountable because I used to be really prompt at 7:30, and I think I'm creeping towards 7:40. Yes, Nikki, exactly. The illusion that they have a choice. Oh, it's so good. That's a great way to put it because that's the way he frames it, right? The every implication of this is you do not have a choice here. What you do, you can agree to this or you can die, but it's framed so that there's a way out, which is so fun. Um, Yeah, yeah. Oh, and yeah, Yola saying, first there was a shadow of disquiet, greater wealth would be found, and then Moria shall be yours. Yeah, so they were set up for this through the Whispers. Great point. Yeah, the Whispers began, and almost as though that would make it easier to sell, maybe the Whispers start falling on Dayan's ears, and and it really sets them up for this gambit. I like that. Yeah, really good. Really good. Um, Jonathan in Sweden as well. So many Europeans joining us. I want you guys to know, all of you who are staying up late, that I am actively searching for a week where I move this to something more Europe friendly, timing wise, and I will eventually do it at least for a week. I appreciate you guys all staying up late. Um, okay, what else? I had a couple other things I wanted to get to before we get to the meat of it. Okay. Elrond, page 315, his response to Glowin. There is naught that you can do other than to resist with hope or without it. Okay, this was something we talked about in Discord in the spoilers chat because it comes so much further ahead. I'm sorry, I can't remember who asked. This is something Denethor will struggle with, and we're getting way ahead of ourselves. But I don't want to go too far into it. But resist with hope or without it. We've talked so much about hope and despair and that dynamic and the spiritual battle here. But Elrond's advice is despair if you want. You shouldn't, but that's the subtext. But despair if you want, but you have to resist. There's no other option. You have to resist. Um, okay, I'm going to speed through a couple more. Elrond spoke of Sauron and the Rings of Power and their forging the second age of the world long ago. A part of his tale was known to some there, but the full tale to none. That's interesting to me, well, for a lot of reasons, but especially not Gandalf. Gandalf wouldn't. I mean, Gandalf came to Middle Earth for this purpose. It's interesting that he doesn't know the full tale. I would have thought that he would. Um, um, okay, I want to pause there just quickly. Kelly Howard asks a good question. In Three's Company, we hear, "Go not to the elves for counsel." So why are dwarves, man, hobbits, wizards, and the Mirkwood elves all seeking advice there? Well, we're not sure. I don't know. Frodo says, "Go not to the elves for counsel, for they will say both no and yes." That might just be a hobbit saying, right? Um, and I mean, it's a good point, but I'm trying to think of the counterpoint. I would say perhaps Go Not to the Elves does not extend to the lore master Elrond. Go not to the elves, but you can go to Elrond. He's a lore master. He'll tell you. Or maybe it's simply that, well, if you're in straits dire enough, hearing both no and yes will provide some clarity, at least delineating the two options that you have. And yeah, Mighty Bearcat exactly was saying the same thing. They're going to elves as last resort. I will also note the Mirkwood elves aren't coming to seek advice. The Mirkwood elves are coming with bad tidings. Maybe advice will be incidental there, but they're coming with bad news. Well, Christy's saying maybe they're sort of coming to plan, not just for advice. Well, Glowin is coming for advice, and yeah, Gandalf not so much, but counsel, yes, I would say. Boromir is coming for advice. Enough of them are coming for advice. Okay. What else did I have? A couple other little margins. Okay. No, I want to get to this in the meat of what we're talking about. Okay, let's get into it. Yeah. Okay. So what we wanted to talk about, what was voted on in the Discord chat, was to talk about both the decay and diminishment of men, as seen from different perspectives, and the Boromir v Aragorn clash here. Clash is strong, but the interplay, and I think both are really interesting. So I think the way that we frame the issue is best given by Elrond when he talks about the fruitless last alliance. Anarion and Isildur and Gil-galad and Elendil being slain. And he says, "Never again," this is 3:18 in my text, "never again shall there be any such league of elves and men." So he makes a statement. Semicolon. 4. Here are my proofs as to why never again there shall be a league of elves and men. "For men multiply, and the firstborn decrease, and the two kindreds are estranged. Period. And ever since that day the race of Numenor has decayed, and the span of their years has lessened." So there are two ways to read this, and I'm not sure exactly which one is true. So the period is kind of throwing me. Never again shall there be such league. 4, because men multiply and the firstborn decrease, and the two kindreds are estranged. Period. Here's my proof of why there won't be any such league. There are more men and fewer elves, and the two kindreds are estranged. Those don't seem to me naturally joined, right? So one way to read that is there won't be any such league because there just aren't any elves anymore. There just aren't enough of us. We can't field an army. And I think that's true. What does that have to do with the estrangement? Or is that a separate point? But it seems like they're joined, right? The comma and the two kindreds are estranged. Are they estranged because of the firstborn decreasing and the men multiplying? I'm not sure about that. The men are sort of taking over Middle-earth, right? Just through multiplying. And the elves are, to borrow Glowin's phrase, hemmed in a narrow place, into narrow places, although they wander. Yeah, Nikki, I'm trying to parse the comma. I don't really have it. And then after the period. And ever since that day, the race of Numenor has decayed, and the span of their years has lessened. Is that another reason why there will be no more league of elves and men? Or is that a separate point? I'm very unclear on this. Yeah, Christie says it sounds like because there are more men, they have less contact. It's harder to forge those types of relationships when there are too many of them. Maybe, but surely you could sort of forge those relationships with the major kingdoms, right? Even though they multiply. I mean, there are still heads of state. You can still have diplomatic relations with a state, even though there are a lot of people there. Um, yes, so yeah, exactly, Nikki. Grammatically, you shouldn't start a new sentence with and in English. And that can't be a slip up. I'm not going to accuse Tolkien of slipping up on grammar. That's far beyond me. So what's the effect of that? I don't know. What's clear is that in the four paragraphs after that, he explains how and why the race of Numenor has decayed. I think that's what he sets it up with this is his thesis, and then he gives the proofs of that. So the race of Numenor has decayed. Let's come back to this. Let's read through what his proofs and then come back to his contention. Okay, so first, in the north, there's the North Kingdom and the South Kingdom of men at the time of the last alliance. In the north, after the war and the slaughter of the Gladden Fields, the men of Westernesse were diminished, etc., etc. Basically, in the north, they were run over. They got wiped out. They got beaten down by the folk of Arnor in the north. Got whooped by Sauron. Well, the remainder of Sauron's forces and the Witch King and whatnot, right? So that's what happened to them. That's why the race of Numenor decayed in the north. Okay, now we go to the south. The realm of Gondor long endured. And remember, Boromir's perking up his ears at this point, right? And he's already probably got a slow burn on after he said the race of Numenor has decayed, the kindreds are estranged, the span of their years has lessened. Like that's the thing he's sensitive about, it seems, right? So he's hearing this. So what does Elrond actually say about Gondor? Its splendor grew for a while. Talk about the chief city, all those things. But then the line of Melendil, son of Anarion, failed, and the tree withered, and the blood of the Númenóreans became mingled with that of lesser men. Okay, so we know that, well, from other Tolkien's works, we know that the Númenóreans had long lifespan, and other men did not. And so if they intermarry, that's going to decrease the lifespan over time, evidently. Okay, so that's the evidence of why the race of Numenor has decayed in the south. But, next paragraph. So it has been for many lives of men, but the lords of Minas Tirith still fight on, defying our enemies, keeping the passage of the river from the Argonath to the sea. This is pretty creditable work, right? Elrond is giving credit to the existing Gondorians and saying they fight on. They're doing valiant work, right? This is him giving credit to Boromir's people. And as soon as he stops speaking, Boromir butts in, right? I think all he heard was decay and diminish, right? And because he says, "For few I deem know of our deeds, and therefore guess little at their peril if we should fail at last." Elrond just said what their deeds were. He just said they hold the passage of the river. He just said they fight on, right? He just said this. Boromir. I said in the Discord, I'm a big Boromir apologist, but this is not his best work in this council. You don't need to jump in here. Elrond's doing a good job. I mean, unless you're contending that the span of the years of the men of Gondor has not lessened since the Númenóreans, which is pretty much the worst that he's said about Gondor, I don't know that you need to jump in here. Believe not that in the land of Gondor the blood of Numenor is spent, nor all its pride and dignity forgotten. Elrond didn't say that. Again, you protest too much. He didn't say that all the pride and dignity is forgotten. He didn't say the blood of Numenor is spent. It's mingled. And that's true, right? Anyway, with that, I'm gonna read your comments, but I want to use that and look back again at Elrond's proofs. Why won't there be any such League of Elves and Men again? With that in mind. Maddie says there are more men, so now they take more of their own counsel. Yeah, that could be it. That is a very simple explanation, and I don't dislike that. Yeah, well, it does form the impression that elves start to belong to the passive Middle Earth. I think we're getting those cues. Christy says the aging thing could be an issue. The men die off too early, or die off early compared to elves, and don't carry on the forefathers' ideals. I think men have always died early compared to elves, of course, in the eyes of an elf, right? They marvel at it. I would think that an 80-year lifespan or a 250-year lifespan would be much of a muchness to an elf, right? Men would die shockingly young. Not carrying on the forefathers' ideals? That is probably true over the long haul. I'm not sure I see the connection to their earlier dying off. Yeah, Nick, you're right. The race of Numenor is mingled with elven blood. We don't really... Have we gotten there yet? Not quite. But I think it is diluting. Yes. Yeah. 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 Christy says, Elrond, I just talked about Gondor's deeds, but go off, I guess. Yeah, I kind of picture him like sitting back down and rolling his eyes. Yeah, okay, the man's talking again. Yeah, Kelly says it mingled with lesser men, like Boromir. I'm guessing he heard that and didn't hear the praise. Yeah, I think he got hot-headed about that for sure. Although it is interesting that the line of the stewards is more pure than other men of Gondor. So he could have taken that and gone, oh yeah, the peasants and their Muggle blood. Yeah, no, I'm a real Numenorian. Um, mm. Okay, now Misty asks, maybe after the fallout between Elrond and Isildur, man didn't look to the elves for wisdom or guidance anymore. That is an interesting point. I want to look very closely at this because that strikes me as a very movie point. Do we know that there was fallout? There was a falling out between Elrond and Isildur. I think that's what your implication is, and I'm guessing, though I'm extrapolating, over the ring, um, because he said that he and Círdan tried to counsel him to destroy it, and he wouldn't. Do we know that there was a falling out over that? Might have been, but I don't know if we know that. Um, so without evidence of that, unless I'm forgetting something, I don't want to credit that for the estrangement. Um, might Isildur have been resentful of being told what to do with the Were-Guild for his father? Maybe. Would Elrond have been sour about him not listening? Might have been, but I don't know if that's the estrangement. Maybe. Um, Yeah, good point. Maddie says a little more for Boromir to take offense to. Elrond did call out Gondor for letting the watch upon the walls of Mordor sleep and losing Minas Ithil. Yep, I mean that's a thing that happened. I mean, it didn't happen under Boromir's watch, but yep, yeah, I can imagine he. I mean, he's being called out to a pretty. His people are being called out to a pretty impressive council here, and this is kind of his introduction. So I can see him wanting to step in. I get that. Maddie says, "Where was Rivendell when Minas Ithil fell?" Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fair question. Okay. Um, uh, Wilms McD says they know they're leaving and don't want to sacrifice themselves and not be able to cross back over the sea. That's a strong claim. It's speculative. I would want more evidence of that. I think if they're tarrying in Middle Earth a while, I think it's because they love Middle Earth and would do things to protect it. I mean, and hey, I mean, for an elf, sacrificing yourself so that doesn't hold together, because if you sacrifice yourself, you do cross back over the sea. You can't come back to Middle Earth then, but you just go to Mandos. So that's where you are. Might save you a boat trip, right? Okay. I want to get to the close reading that most people voted for before it gets too late, and we're already very late. So, Aragorn and Boromir. Sorry, last thing on this diminishment thing. I think that what Aragorn says on page 323 acknowledges the diminishment in a way that Boromir does not. For my part, I forgive your doubt, he said. Little do I resemble the figures of Elendil and Isildur as they stand carven in their majesty in the halls of Denethor. I am but the heir of Isildur, not Isildur himself. I think there's an implicit acknowledgement there that he has diminished, he has decayed from his line, right? He is not the king that they were. And I think he feels that and knows that. And I think to hear him, I mean, he grew up on Elrond's knee, right? To hear Elrond saying that, he's probably going, yeah, about right, yeah. And maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I think that he's more accepting of that. Okay, so Boromir gives his dream poem, right? Well, before that, so he gives his whole defense of Gondor, and it's a good one. He gets a little bit boastful, and I'm going to say that in comparison to Elrond. So there are two scenes that are described. The first is, the second, first I'll read, is from Boromir, about the last bridge at Osgiliath, page 320. I was in the company that held the bridge until it was cast down behind us. 4 only were saved by swimming, my brother and myself and 2 others. Okay, so that's an account of a thing that happened, and a pretty heroic thing, right? A rear guard to destroy a bridge to keep the host of Mordor from coming across at Osgiliath. That's valiant. Here's another account of a reasonably valiant thing. This is an account by Elrond, page 317, of 5 individuals, elves and men, literally hand-to-hand fighting against Sauron the Maiar. But few marked what Isildur did. He alone stood by his father in that last mortal contest, and by Gil-galad only Círdan stood, and I. Okay, so parsing that, there was a last mortal contest between Sauron and 5 individuals. Elendil, Isildur, Gil-galad, Círdan, and Elrond. 5-on-1 at Orodruin. And Elendil and Gil-galad were killed, but eventually, I guess, one of Isildur, Círdan, or Elrond threw down Sauron and cut the ring from his finger. And I don't think it was like the Jackson film. The Jackson film was a good one where, you know, he reaches down and then the slicing and whatever. That's not what happened. They beat down, the 5 of them beat down Sauron and looted the ring from his corpse, right? That's what's being described in the book. But he alone stood by his father in that last mortal contest, and by Gil-galad only Círdan stood. And I. He's so parenthetical in this, right? It wasn't, I held the bridge. I was in the company that held the bridge. My brother and I and 2 others swam across in full armor, which is pretty impressive. He's an afterthought at the greatest hand-to-hand battle of the Second Age, right? I think this is very humble of Elrond, in contrast to the boastfulness of Boromir. Not without cause. That's pretty impressive, but the contrast is noteworthy to me. Okay. He talks about his journey of 110 days. He gives the poem. And he's come to the house of Elrond. And Aragorn stands up, and here in the house of Elrond, more shall be made clear to you. Here is the sword that it was broken. And who are you, and what have you to do with Minas Tirith? Sensible question from Boromir. But Aragorn doesn't answer, right? Elrond answers this. And I doubt Elrond just, jumped in, right? There must have been a pause. There must have been kind of an awkward silence. And so Elrond fills it. He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn. And he is descended through many fathers from Isildur, Elendil, son of Minas Ithil. The implications of that, of course, are very clear to the steward's son, right? Aragorn doesn't say it out loud. So there's a little Frodo interlude. And then, is then the doom of Minas Tirith come at last? But why then should we seek a broken sword? Aragorn explains the words were not the doom of Minas Tirith, but doom and great deeds are indeed at hand. And he goes on to talk about the sword, and it'll be reforged. Now you have seen the sword that you have sought. What would you ask? Do you wish for the house of Elendil to return to the land of Gondor? Okay. Here's where I defend Boromir. Here's his strongest moment. I think Aragorn is putting him in a very difficult position here. I think Aragorn asks 2 questions here. What would you ask? That's a fair question. Do you wish for the house of Elendil to return to Gondor? What do you say? To the land of Gondor? Yeah. That's an unfair question. What he's asking is, would you like me to come in on the evidence that you have heard here so far and supplant your father as leader of Gondor? Is that what you would like? Do I have your leave to do that? Boromir's a good diplomat, but he does not. This is above his pay grade. He cannot answer that question. That's up to the steward. The steward decides when it is appropriate and when he is charged with laying down his power, right? And if he is convinced that this is the rightful king returning, then he ought to. But that's not Boromir's call. Boromir cannot answer this question. And I think Boromir does a really good job answering it. I was not sent to beg any boon, but to seek only the meaning of a riddle. I'm not going to answer that, Aragorn. I didn't come here to find a king. And I don't have the authority to authorize a king either. So I wasn't sent to beg anyone. I wasn't sent to find a king. But if you're asking about the sword, yeah, we can use swords there. Now, I mean, this is the diplomacy coming in, right? I'm not going to say you're not the king. I said this in Discord chat, but Gondor has no king. Gondor needs no king. Come on, Jackson. That's not what he said. He's just demurring. He's not saying, like, I genuinely do not believe that Boromir, once he had been satisfied as to the bona fides of Aragorn, if he came back to Minas Tirith to find Denethor dead, would resist the rightful return of the king. I don't think he would. But he's got to be convinced first. And more importantly, the steward needs to be convinced first. If that's him, then it takes some convincing. But, I mean, hey, what were we talking about with going to the elves for counsel? Go to Boromir for counsel, because he will say both no and yes in a cool way. Yet we are hard-pressed, and the sword of Elendil would be a help beyond our hope, if such a thing could indeed return out of the shadows of the past. So he has doubt. But on the off chance that you are, in fact, the returning king, and you have this incredibly powerful sword and can wield it, yeah, we could use that. We really could. And I would welcome that. I think that's what he's saying here. I've been jabbering. Let me catch up. Hang on. Okay, so big picture question from Christy. This may be crazy, but could Aragorn have been raised to feel less than, so that he doesn't have the typical pride of men, so that when he inevitably deals with the ring, he has less chance of immediate corruption? I take issue with inevitably. I mean, his mother and Elrond, his foster father, I don't think have any reason to believe that he will inevitably deal with the ring. I can readily believe that they would teach him humility, or seek to, because that's a good trait in one who could be king. But yeah, I don't know. I'm resistant to that on the grounds that I don't think. Well, Elrond does have the gift of foresight, but I don't know if that's anything more than, again, a shadow over the heart. It's a good question. Nikki says that, honestly, I think most things men do aren't as impressive when you compare it to elves. They can hear better, see better, move better, live longer, etc. I don't know about that. So, like, I don't want to gloss over what Boromir did. I haven't tried swimming in plate mail or chain mail armor, but I guarantee you I would drown. And I would bet that most elves would drown. This is a strong man to be able to do that. That is impressive. I don't know that an elf would have done that with ease. I mean, Glorfindel would have, obviously. But would Aristor? Would Gildor? I don't know. Yeah, Paige says Boromir seems on the defensive. I agree with that. But Paige says he's clearly intimidated by the others, which is why he interjects and feels the need to justify his kind in others. I don't know if I buy intimidated, Paige. I think this is the, he's not the prince exactly, but functionally he's the prince of Gondor. I think he would not feel intimidated, is my guess. I think he feels attacked, and he might feel the need to justify Gondorians to this council. But I think if he felt intimidated, I don't think he would be jumping in as often as he does. I don't think this is like a nervous tick. I think he expects to command this room because he's used to commanding rooms, and is kind of behaving that way. That's my read. Um, yeah, Christy says Aragorn being raised to inevitably deal with the ring, maybe inevitable in the sense of the story, or at the very least, someone knows since the ring isn't destroyed, it's still in play. Unless Elrond has some sort of gift of foresight in that regard, until the ring is found, it's not still in play. Because the lore master of the rings, Saruman, has earnestly studied this matter, and it's no longer in play. It is not. It rolled down Anduin into the sea, and it's gone. His hope will cheat him, right? So I don't think. Yeah, no, I'm going to kibosh this on the evidence that we have. Elrond doesn't know. The wise do not know that the ring is still in play, other than Saruman. And I think we can't buy that that he's being trained to deal with the ring from birth, because the ring isn't in play anymore. So I want to get I want to get to Aragorn's sort of rebuttal here. So we went over the little do I resemble the figures of Elendil and Isildur. This is so I've had a hard life and a long, and the leagues that lie between here and Gondor are a small part in the count of my journeys. So this is in response, I think, to Boromir talking about journeying 110 days and the way is long and dangerous, etc. This is sit down, Junior, right, from Aragorn. And remember, Aragorn's quite a bit older than Boromir. 110 days? Pff, I go from here. That's Tuesday for me. I go from here to Gondor at a whim. I go to Far Harad and Rune and places where the stars are strange. So don't 110 days me, Boromir. And I'm sure the elves kind of laughed at that. That was a rookie move. And then he sort of, okay, so he takes issue with Boromir's, what was it, by us alone? Thus alone are peace and freedom maintained in the lands behind us, bulwark of the West. Thus alone. Those are proud words, right? Aragorn rebuts them. If Gondor Boromir has been a stalwart tower, we have played another part. That's pretty understated, right? You talked about how you were not overrun at Osgiliath by strength of arms. It was dark sorcery and whatnot, right? Well, that's what I deal with every day up here in the north. Dark sorcery. That's what slips by your tower. And I have to protect old Barlaman from that, right? I wish I could deal with a whole bunch of mercs from Rune and Harad, right? I could cut them down easily enough. But the dark that you complain about flees from us. Now, not exactly, what Boromir is complaining about is the Witch King or some other rider. And that's not what Boromir or what Aragorn and the Rangers deal with regularly, but that's kind of the thrust of it, right? Like, you do a good job with the brick and mortar stuff down there, and you do, but don't pat yourself on the back too hard, right? And then what? So what he concludes with is interesting. But now the world is changing once again. A new hour comes. Isildur's bane is found. Battle is at hand. The sword shall be reforged. I will come to Minas Tirith. This is a departure from what he asked Boromir, right? Do you wish for the House of Elendil to return to the land of Gondor? He didn't answer that. Kind of roundaboutly, right? So Aragorn kind of answers it for him, but in a different way. He doesn't say, the king shall return to the throne of Gondor. The House of Elendil shall be placed in its rightful spot. No, I will come to Minas Tirith. I'll bring my sword. The sword will be reforged. I will come to Minas Tirith, right? That's less threatening to Boromir, I think. The paractactic structure of this sentence is interesting. So many hard stops and periods, right? It emphasizes each one. The world is changing once again, period. A new hour comes, period. Isildur's bane is found, period. Battle is at hand, period. The sword shall be reforged, period. I will come to Minas Tirith, period. We did so little of, I mean, that's basically the first quarter of the Council of Elrond. We talked so little about what Gandalf said. We may bring some of that into the second part, but Gandalf's whole summary of his account of his doings, of Saruman's treachery, of Isildur's scroll, the Black Speech. Oh, what a passage that is. And that was done so well in the films, in the obviously in the extended version, where Gandalf reads the Black Speech of Mordor off the ring, and the sky grows dark and the elves trembled. The only thing is, I wish Hugo Weaving had read Elrond's thing. In the book, I read this as angry from Elrond. Never before has any voice dared to utter words of that tongue in Imladris, Gandalf the Grey. This is a rebuke from Elrond. In the movie, he said it more like, I don't know, say wonderment, or he was dazed, kind of. Like, wow, I can't believe that happened. I read this in the book as mad. You should not have done that. How dare you, in my house, right, clean your mouth out with soap? And that makes the nonetheless I do not ask your pardon, Master Elrond, so much more interesting to me. Yeah. Oh, and Rosie May is popping in just at the very end, which I think we've reached. But watch the whole stream once it's uploaded. Yeah, Aragorn be spitting facts there. That's right, Nikki. Okay, let's leave it there. Sorry to drop it off right as Rosie joined there, but I'll upload right now and it'll all be available. But thank you for coming, everyone. That was really fun, and I'm really looking forward to getting the second half next week, starting on Sunday. So we get a little bit of Radagast. We get the conversation with Saruman, I think. No, wait. Where are we? Yeah, we do. That's going to be good. We get their debate about what's going to happen. We get Bilbo. Oh, so good. Such a good rest of the chapter. Awesome. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you more on Discord. Sign up if you're not there. Link is in the info bar, and good night.